A warm welcome to my dear panelist and wonderful audience sitting here. We definitely are expecting few more to join, hopefully, in the coming time. But on a Saturday morning, I was there at Shashi Tharoor's introductory lecture or a session where he was talking about words, and words is all he has to take people's heart away. Okay, so that's the session about it was a mesmerizing session, and he played words. He coined four words today, what I understand in the session. So today, the session is also, it talks about, I'm also wearing a t-shirt which states like creator, craft and creation. Okay, so I managed to get a t-shirt which is pertaining to the session as well. So we have wonderful panelists sitting here. First of all, thank you. And it's pleasure. I'm meeting few of them like Bhavya and Mehul for the first time. Shatrujeet I've, of course, met during few of the book signings and book launches sessions what we had previously done. And this is a beautiful, beautiful topic because when I really thought over it. When it says like creator, craft and creation. So my question, I would start with Shatrujeet. As a creator, how do you feel while you are in the process of creating the content or the work which you are into? Yes, Shatru.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot. Very good morning. You've all turned up after Shashi Tharoor. We'll try our best to be as good as him. So pardon us if we can't, but we'll try our best. So, Harshil, thanks for this, and good to meet Bhavya and Mehul I met before. But to answer your question, the process of creativity, there is this, I failed to pronounce this gentleman's name. He's got a very complicated name. He's Czechoslovakian. He has this concept called flow. And he speaks about flow being the most critical element in virtually any creative, in virtually any endeavor. And he talks about how flow is such a important aspect for sports people. So when you are a sports person and you are in your flow, you are so much in tune with what you're doing that you virtually lose yourself in that activity. And I think in many ways the creative business is quite the same. In the Mahabharata, there is that famous question when Drona, there's this bird that's hanging on a tree, and Drona, one by one, he keeps asking his students, what do you see? And all of them, they say, we see the tree, we see the bird, we see the branches, the leaves, and there's only Arjun, he says, I see nothing but the bird. And actually that is flow. That is real flow, because that is so much of focus in what you have to achieve. And in many ways, I think creativity, that's really what it is, at least for me. And I think it's true about all of us. When we really get into what we are doing, there is a certain zoning out of everything else around us and a complete focus on what we've got to do. I think that really is what what you're talking about, the creator, the craft and the creation being one. That really is what, to my mind, creativity is all about. And the more closer you are able to get to that, the more often you are able to get to that, the more consistently, the third C would be, or the fourth C would be consistency. I think that's really when you get, you really get into the zone of creating something which you love. And I think by default, if you love something that you have done, it attracts love. That's what I think.
And just to continue the conversation, how do you achieve it? Because that's the crux, that's the beauty. In terms of, we have so many distractions these days. Our attention span is going down under. And how do you still achieve that day in, day out?
So I think now if we go back to the fourth C, I think the fourth C becomes the first C. It is consistency that gets you there. One of my favorite things that I keep talking about is that, some days the muse will not show up. Those days the writer must. The writer has to come every day and sit. they can't wait for the muse to come. Aaj mere ko inspiration nahi aaya. It's never going to happen. Even if you don't have inspiration, you have got to come and sit and work. I think that's really what gets you. The more you often you come and sit down and write or paint or whatever it is that you do, I mean, even accountancy. You might be great at numbers, but you still have to show up and do the math. The math doesn't do it itself. So I think that's really what it is. You've got to condition yourself into doing, showing up every day, sitting down and doing it. It's like going to the gym. It's like playing squash. You can't play squash by, once a month, going and knocking the ball around. You have to go up and turn up and do that every day. That's how you get better at it. I think that's really what it is. It's just every day, showing up every day and hoping, and and then after some time it just becomes part of you, muscle memory, whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
So I was also listening to an interesting, piece from Javed Saab, and exactly he said the same thing. He said it is very important, and because he's so, proficient in the language what he uses, Urdu. So he was like कि वही फासला होता है एक अच्छे कवि या अच्छे ऑथर या लेखक जिनको लिखना है to show up, as you rightly said, and the book Atomic Habits also talks about it, James Clear. Like you need to show up, that consistency each and every day. It's not important how much you do, what you do, but at least you show up, at least it will bring you to the level what you want to achieve one day. So it's not that day will come on its own. You have to show up, and consistency is the key. So thanks, Shatru. But, again, question to Mehul here is, because he wears multiple hats. Okay, he's writing books, he's coaching, he's training, and whatnot. Okay, so now the question to you is, because you do so many things around, how do you still manage to get that consistency and switch your roles? Because that is also the key. Like, you are wearing a different hat at the one role in terms of training, one role in terms of an author, one role in terms of coaching as a mentor, and you do so many other things as well. Pardon me if I miss few others. But as he does so many things, how do you switch roles and you still manage to attain that proficiency or that key or that flow? Like flow is something I recollect. I'd also read, especially there are a lot of females here, and for people who have done that would also agree to me. Like my mom always asked me to pour oil from one vessel to another, and that flow. How many of y'all have done that? Of course, many of y'all, right? And while you are pouring, and if the nozzle is, if the opening is not big, you need to still maintain that consistency. You need to transfer the oil from one vessel to the another without, dropping an oil drop. Okay? So how it is essential while you are doing in your art, because you are doing so many things. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you, Harshil. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here and amongst this very good co-panelist of mine. It's a real privilege and pleasure. So thank you so much for being here. So Harshil, thank you for that lovely context setting about me. But, I strongly believe that it is the two things that I largely rely on. One is the relevance quotient, because it has to be absolutely relevant. If I have to talk about categorically about the training and coaching that I do, of course they are coming to me because there is a need, So if I as a professional, I am not able to identify that need, then it questions my competence. So I have to understand that need. I probe them, I ask them questions, I get to the bottom of it, that what is it that you are looking at. Sometimes I have been given this feedback that it has actually triggered our thoughts as well. It's good that you asked us, because now we know what exactly we want. This was something we were doing, but now we have more clarity. So it becomes a win-win situation. So that becomes my first thing. The second thing is the passion. Because I am so passionate about the things that I do. If I have to write, I will switch off from everything around me. And my wife is over here, so she can probably second that. I switch off myself from everything around me. Whatever noise is around me, I have to switch off. I have to be in that moment. And I have to think about, why am I doing this? Now, with due respect, we have a lot of authors mushrooming today, which is a good thing. The problem is, most of them are coming into the field of writing or any other field because it's a trend. That should not be the case. You write because you want to tell something. You want people to know something. So that relevance and that passion count a lot, and because we all are authors, I'm sure each one of us must be getting these questions. A lot of people, your neighbors, your friends, your business associates, they question you, I'm planning to write this. How should I go about it? What do I do? What is the process? Will I get a publisher? I said, don't think about the publisher right now. You are thinking about the end result, book bikega, nahi bikega, kya hoga, mujhe kya karna padega. That's all not what you need to think now. Think about what is my story. What is it that I have to tell people? What is it that I feel from inside? So whatever I have written so far, my short films, fortunately by the grace of God, have done well. They have gotten recognition. The only reason that happened is not because I am Mehul Darooka. It happened because I had that passion to tell a story. So I got into that frame of mind and I made myself relevant to what people would want to see, what people would want to read. My books on entrepreneurship is about that passion. I don't talk about numbers. I don't talk about turnovers. I don't talk about sales. Boss, you have decided you need to stand up and do something. You're a champion, in my opinion. Because you're fighting the environment yourself. You're putting that step forward. You're moving out of your comfort zone. That itself is a big thing. And with due respect, I don't see that. In most people, I don't see that. They want to do that for the heck of doing it. So I hope I am answering your question, Harshil.
Sure. Yeah.
So that is what triggers my thoughts, and that's how I space out myself. When I'm doing my trainings and coaching, it's all about what my customer needs and put my effort into doing that. If I'm not sure about a certain thing, I will let them know, but I'll prepare myself for it. But not give them something that they wouldn't expect or wouldn't want.
Half cooked, yeah.
And yes, and writing, yes, it's the passion. I have a story to tell, I will tell, And probably that's how I have grown as an author. When I started in 2012, was very naive, had nothing to talk about. But slowly and steadily, yes, there are things, and I have many things to now share with people, so that's how it is.
Great. And also, one more important thing, because you are doing so many multiple things, how do you balance it out? Because that is also important. Like, definitely you would also have deadlines, you would have things and ends to meet. So how do you balance it out without, giving half-cooked or something which is expected at the core how it should be?
Absolutely, Harshil. It's a very tricky thing. I'm sure Shatrujeet and Bhavya will also agree with me. So let me give an anecdote. I was watching this YouTube. Somewhere I was watching Subhash Chandraji, the ex-former head of ZTV. So he was addressing a student population on the topic time management. So he spoke a lot on what should be done and what should not be done. Then there's one student who stood up and he said, "Sir, how can you manage time with creativity? It just sparks you at one given point. It just something inside you, there's a light that switches on. And how do you put that into the time constraint? Agar mujhe painting karni hai ya writing karni hai, it is my creativity that will drive it. Which is fine, which is nice, which is good. Like Shatrujeet said, that consistency needs to be there. If you are a mindful person who realizes that your creativity, somebody is depending on that, you have to acquire those skills of being a professional and get that time management in thing. If within that time frame or time management, you can't be sitting for years together saying that meri creativity spark nahi ho rahi hai. Unless of course you are somebody who people would want to wait for years together. But even in that case, that shouldn't be the thing. So I try to, have that thing in me where by the grace of God, naturally I'm a very organized person. So I don't like to mess up with my client needs or my publisher needs or any such thing unless of course there is a very valid reason. So I give myself a certain timeline. I do the reverse engineering that if this is what I need to do, these are the things I need to have, these are the attributes I'll need to finalize, these are the things that I will need, these are the people I may want to. Like my entrepreneurship books have been based on people's interview. So if I have to interview a Quick Hill founder, he's a very busy man. So I'll have to give myself that significant area of time to get into touch with his office, get his appointment, get his time, and likewise all that. I've been very fortunate that I have had such good people that I have interviewed. So I put those things in it and then I commit the publisher that, okay, I will be ready by this and this time, this is what I will take, and they have been kind enough to accommodate that. So you have to be mindful. What I have observed is people don't think in those detail. That lateral thinking is missing. They don't really delve into that deeper, and they just take it as it goes, which is okay to an extent, but does not work in the long run. So that was what I have personally practiced.
So, thanks. And now you, like we spoke about consistency, we spoke about relevance, we spoke about passion. And Bhavya, to you, you definitely are a, creative in terms of, and while creating, what aspects, because you do in day out, okay, so, and there's a beautiful, there has to be something, there are many Hindi movies which also says like बिखरोगे तो निखरोगे वो दर्द होना चाहिए, there needs to be something which you have gone through over the years, so that that art form comes out, that creativity comes out. So what is your take on it, and where do you drive your inspiration in terms of the amazing work, in terms of motivational doodling, beautiful quotes, what you have? So, yeah, please enlighten on that.
Thank you, Harshil. Hello, everyone. So my take on this is that when I started Doodle Desk, it was totally based on the quote that you just quoted. And the base of it definitely comes when you go through a life-shattering experience. In my case, both my parents passed away. That's how I started Doodle Desk. My dad was a doctor, so I wanted to help other people, but in my own unique way. So I went back to my childhood and I figured out what I really like doing as a child, and I used to love doodling and I used to love art. So that's how Doodle Desk started. That was my basis of transformation or self-discovery, is what you can say. So I feel that when you go through a tough time in life, that time you might feel that, like, what am I going through, right? But those are your seeds of massive transformation, in my opinion. So I feel that when you get that, you have two choices. You can either sit at home and cry, or you can make a different world out of it, like help others.
So, this is very, like, we all would have gone through ups and downs in our life. After, there's also a beautiful quote which says, "This shall also pass." Yeah. And of course, time is the biggest healer. But while you are in that experience, or you are already submerged in that kind of an, with that low, how do you battle it out? And at that time, what is more important for you? And, there are a lot of young people here as well. For them, if we can address, like, how do you take yourself out of that equation or that situation? Because at that time, it's very difficult. Whatever said and done, people say you read this, you listen to music, you try out doing something or another and divert your mind. But during that time, what I've realized, anything said and done, things doesn't work. So what would be your advice for, because you have already battled it out,
True.
and it would be great to listen from you.
So my point and my take on this is that, like I said, you always have two choices. You either do it or you sit at home and cry. Positive thinking is like going to the gym. If you want to lose weight, you go every day, you show up. So positive thinking is exactly like that. I feel that you have to incorporate it and do it very mindfully each day, because this is for you, right? And until and unless like something inside you doesn't change, your outside world will also not change.
Okay. I would just like to read few, this is one of my favorite poems. You must have heard or listened, If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubt too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those to imposters just the same, If you can bear to hear the truths you have spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them with worn out tools. So, Shatru, my question to you is, as you know, as a craft, how do you detach yourself after a point in time? Because, say, you have written Warlord of Ayodhya, Vikramaditya series. So, how do you, and I personally wish you also come up with one book, because if I haven't read the book in series, it takes a time. So, for the readers as well, like Karachi Deception, you have one singular book. So yeah, that's apart. But how do you detach yourself? Because it's like your baby, your creation. So how important as an artist it is also to, detach yourself with the creation.
Yeah, I think this is very important because on one side we speak about passion and commitment and consistency, which means you're pouring your mind, heart, and soul into something. But at the end of the day, the umbilical cord has to be cut. Okay, and that is, it's like it's that moment when your children leave home, and you know that they've grown up and they're never going to be children again. And you realize that come what may, now they have an independent life of their own. So your creation also is a bit like that. And I think the first moment of realization, there are many moments of that realization that happen. The first is when your editor sends you a note telling you that this does not work. That is the first moment that you realize you've got to become dispassionate. You can't be passionate and possessive about something just because you have created it. Okay. There is now, you're setting it out into the world. This is now, it has to survive on its own. You cannot shelter it and chaperone it any longer. So that is the first moment of truth. The bigger moment of truth is when a reader reads it and says something nasty about it. Okay, I did not like this. This is the second moment of truth. I think, and all these things hurt us as creators, which is natural because, we genuinely believe we are great. Whether we have created or not, that's irrelevant. We all tend to believe we are great. And if we have created something, we think it's obviously something, it's something which is very personal. But we must understand that once you create a paperboat and you set it to float. Its purpose is to float. Its purpose is not to stay out of water. Otherwise, you just write a journal and you keep it away in your cupboard. If you are setting it out in the public eye, it is going to get criticized. There are people who are not going to like it. There are people who are going to hate it. It doesn't matter. I think that's really where that disconnect needs to come in. You need to realize that, yes, this is important, this is mine, but this is not me. There is more to me than this, and there is more to this than me. I think that is important because if you start assuming that this is me, then you start taking those criticisms very personally. Then you become too attached to that. I think that's really what we need to do. We need to just disconnect and say, I have done my best for this. Now it's destiny. Let it go. Let it survive. Let it thrive. Let it sink, float. Let it be.
Wonderful. So there's also a beautiful quote. The ship is safe in the harbor, but that's not where the place it's meant to be.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And Bhavya, continuing the discussion, what do you feel in terms of the art of letting go?
For me, I think the art of letting go is about trusting the process. I feel that surrendering is a very, very big part that comes with any job of, if you're a creator, if you're an artist. Um, like he said that, you have to let go because that's where the real value lies, right? I have put like a part of my soul into my creation, right? But the true value is when it touches somebody else's soul.
So great. And Mehul, my question is, as Bhavya mentioned about surrendering, uh, how important the role of divinity in the work we as an artist do? If you, of course, we all believe in different forms and whichever faith or form we believe in. So how important is the role, and how do you find that giving its grace upon you?
Absolutely, Harshil. So each to his own. It's a very subjective thing. Divinity is different for each one of us. For me, it is being true to myself. And there's a very popular phrase that we all use: work is worship. So I always would want to give 100% justice to whatever I'm doing. It could be the littlest most thing or the grandest most thing that I may be doing. Like, for example, today's event over here, I could have just walked in. I could have just spoken impromptu about it. But I did think about what would be my approach, what would be my co-panelists like, what should we talk, what should we do. There was a certain thought process I went through. That is because I want to make things happening and good for people who are there today, sitting over here, and I need to add value to them. And of course, my other co-panelists are competent enough to do that even better than me. That is how I see divinity. That is how I see that I need to be good, I need to do well. There is somebody investing their time, effort, energy behind reading my book or attending my training or my thing. I need to give my 100%. So even beyond that if possible. So that's how I look at it.
And do you ever feel because when as an artist or creators, we try to control things. Okay, so then how do you draw a line in terms of that divinity upon you, wherein that flow or that consistency we spoke about?
A very trick thing to do, because like you rightly said, when you're working with a team of people, there are a lot of perspectives. So when you are new, you have just begun your career, you don't understand, you don't know how to kind of differentiate between the two, because you are so keen to prove yourself that you probably unknowingly may disrespect or disregard some opinion or something. But as you mature and as you grow older and you become better at it, probably still some people don't do that, but probably you try to now differentiate things. You try to understand what is a good thing and not a so good a thing. So my process is, whenever I'm working with something or someone, I always try to understand their point of view. I try to have a good productive discussion around it with them and try to get to the root of what they are saying and why they are saying that. And if it is making sense, then of course I'll be the most happiest to incorporate that. But if it is not making sense, I give my point of view and let them know this is something that we can do, this is how we will do, these would be the outcomes of it. If you think this is right, then let's go ahead with doing that. The challenge is about being that person who can assertively put your point forward in a firm manner. Things go wrong when you try to, become a little too arrogant, or you become a little too, you have an air of yourself or things like that. That's where things go wrong. So that's how I try to put the point. But that's how much you can do as a human. That's your human effort. Now rest, like Shatrujeet said, leave it to God. If it has to float, it will float. It has to sink, it will sink. It has its destiny. The more I fight, the more I try to prove myself, I may appear as a joker to the other person. Makes no sense. So just keep your dignity, your grace, put forth your point in a very meticulous and a very, assertive manner, and then leave it. That's how I do it.
So people also try to, box the creators or the artist in a certain parameters or boxes, or so that I was trying to give a direction to the question. So Shatrujeet, what is your take in terms of, does the creators feel like please give our space and then we will drive things, or you still feel there should be a boundary or a wall where you need to be given a direction?
See, there is a little bit of while on one side it's all about, again, going back about passion, commitment, and, consistency and all of that. There is also something which is very critical in virtually any line of business, and it might be a very fatalistic way of looking at life, but you need to have something called patience. Okay. Mehul just spoke about, trying to force things, for example. Nature never forces things. Things happen in nature when it is scheduled to happen. Okay. Nature knows when it has to happen. I think a lot of the time when we do things, and this has happened to me a lot, very often, when I am trying to work on something and, I'm trying to force a result, I don't get what I want. And sometimes you just have to be patient. It's happened in the case of my Vikramaditya Veergatha series. When I started writing the series in 2013, I actually did not have a very good ending in mind for the books. And it's only in 2019, while I had started writing my fourth book, that I actually arrived at what I think is a very good ending for the book. But it took 6 years for me to get to that ending. Which, I mean, I never told my publisher that at that time, because he would have been mortified at the thought that, you don't have an ending and you've started a series. But that was the truth. The thing is, I did have endings, but they were, very mediocre endings. The ending that today I have, and I think most of readers who have read the series agree that this is a perfect ending for it. That took 6 years. I think one of the things that has taught me, apart from the fact that, once you give your manuscript to the publisher, you have to wait for ages to get the book to get published. That also teaches you patience. So patience is something that you really learn, and I think that's really important. So specific to your question about, I think that patience is important for anyone in the creative business. Give the person, and this happens a lot, particularly when you're writing in the movie business, for example, there is this, I want this deadline, can I have this a week from now? I don't know. I don't know if you can have it from a week. I don't know if I will have it in a week from now. So I think you need to give a little bit of time. Let people breathe. Let them think about ideas. I think it's very important that this has to happen, because if you bully an idea, you will get an idea. But you will get an average idea. You would not have got the best possible idea. It's also possible you might wait for 6 months and still not get a better idea than that. But that's really what it is. I mean, wine has to ferment. It needs to brew, and it needs to be in that cask for whatever, 18 years for it to become the vintage that it becomes. You don't open that cask the third day and drink from it. So I think that's really what it is.
Wonderful answer. Wine has to ferment. So a lot of quotes to take away from Shatru here. And Bhavya, my question before I open it to the audience would be like, what goes in comes out. So how much efforts, does your work, we all would like to know. It takes the persistency, the consistency with what you do. So what is your day, or, things behind the scene? Because people, of course, see what is there on the face, or, on the screens. But how much efforts does it goes behind for that to come out? Yes.
Thank you for that question. So I feel that in any form of art, or even if you're an author, there is a lot of discipline that you need to go through every day. Like he said, that you have to show up, right? So I think an average day in my life would be to brainstorm, ideate, which is, I think, the most exciting part of my job. Then comes criticism. I like to really be critical of my work before I put it out there. And I think lastly, when you get the final product, it is, I think, the complete calm. So all in all, I feel that the entire process for an artist should be meditative yet fun. So I think that when you're putting your soul, your time, your hours, your energy into it, what you're getting out of it should be worthwhile for you, as well as adding value to others.
And how do you judge that is it worthwhile for, like for others as well? How do you have a barometer for it, or how
I
do you?
think I've always been very open to feedback.
Okay.
From my followers, from my readers. So I feel that when they give you feedback, it is genuine and it's not personal.
Okay. So wonderful. All the three panelists, they did say showing up. So thanks for showing up, the wonderful audience here. That's the reason we are also here. And now the stage is open for the questions. Yes, please, ma'am. May I request the volunteers quickly to pass on the mics?
My question is to young, attractive Miss. Yes, Bhavya. I am a domestic violence crisis counselor. I've been in this line for many years, and I don't have to explain to anyone what is domestic violence. It is at various stages. There are various levels, just like any other issue, and it's very severe. I deal also with people who are so stressed they cannot do the yoga, which you say, which is not impossible. They can't even do deep meditation. They don't go to classes. But what I understand, I'm not a doodler, but what I understand from you is that doodling requires a physical activity, and they don't have to concentrate on that because slowly they start relaxing. It needs only a pen and paper, pencil. Is that correct? Would you be able to give me, so I'm not a doodler, I read books. I'm crazy about books, and that's what keeps me going. So I can't understand this, but what you say makes sense. Would you give me some tips that I can help those who need something like this, something simple but yet very effective? How to get started? Is there a website, a book, or what tips, or what can I tell them to convince them that
Surely.
it's a good
Thank you,
activity?
ma'am, for the question. So there is a form of artwork called the Zentangle. The artwork basically relies on making small tangle kind of an art form, which is very easy to doodle. So basically, you can start with, say, by joining dots. So what happens is eventually you slowly get immersed into the process and your mind calms down. So I think that Zentangle is a fantastic way for people who are going through grief to start with, because I feel that it is much easier than meditation.
Just a follow-up quick question. How do they get started? I mean, they don't need to go to a website or a book. They just start on their own with dots and
Yeah,
it
but like
flows.
if
Is
somebody
that-
Googles Zentangle, like there are
What's the
various
spelling?
Zentangle,
Oh,
Z-E-N
oh,
and T.
Z-E-N and
Yeah.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, any more questions? Yes.
My question while you were talking was more on, books that are written on mythological characters or historical characters that seem like mythology. They must have existed in the past, of course. And there is a lot of different perspectives that come out of different books that are written based on either history or mythological characters. Now, I run a library, and I'm an avid reader, so I keep reading on all perspectives. Sometimes I just wonder that, through all of the, looking at perspectives is definitely good. Multitude of perspectives is definitely good. But what I also end up thinking is that my children or the next generation or 3 generations down the line, the kind of originality of the history or the originality of the characters may get lost in the process. And the book that is coming out now, which is a fictional take of something that must have happened, is what is going to be etched in their minds as being real. So how do you, while keeping the creativity still online, how do you, see this happening? Down the line, there could be a completely different version of, say, a character from Mahabharata, right?
Yeah, this is a question that I get a lot. So, yeah. See, the thing is that, okay, let's take the Ramayana for example, right? Now, today we all know when we think of the Ramayana is virtually, the Lakshman Rekha sequence from the Ramayana where, Lakshman draws the Lakshman Rekha and Sita is not supposed to cross it and Ravan comes and all that. That is now integral to the Ramayana that most people know. This Ramayana doesn't exist in the Adi Kavya, which is Valmiki's Ramayana. It doesn't exist. Which means the supposedly the original Ramayana did not have the Lakshman Rekha sequence. This is a sequence that comes in later as an addition by some other storyteller. Somebody decided that, okay, how do I make this more interesting? Maybe it might have been a dramatic device. I don't know what the compulsion of that creator was. That person said, let me create a dramatic device. Let me put one Lakshman Rekha so Ravan can't cross it. Let me make an obstacle for Ravan. So he has to, now Sita has to cross that. So how do I show Ravan is a cool guy? So I'll make him dress up like a mendicant, whatever it is. My point is that, let's take the Shakuntalam. Our understanding of Shakuntala's story is essentially comes from Kalidasa's rendition. That is not the story of Shakuntala at all. So creative license has been exercised through centuries and across generations. And the original also exists, the newer version also exists. Very often the newer version becomes more popular and gets absorbed into the larger original version. I think what happens is that it depends on the skill of the storyteller. To my mind, the Lakshman Rekha sequence got absorbed because it's a very powerful sequence. It's a very dramatic sequence. Okay. There could have been other creative licenses that that were attached to the Ramayana which probably didn't work and fell away. So I think a lot of it boils down to how compelling the storyteller is and how compelling whatever his or their interpretation is, how compelling it is. And as long as it's compelling and makes for a good case, I think it's absolutely fine because it does not take away from the canon. It adds to the canon. It makes the canon stronger, in my mind. That's what I think the Lakshman Rekha sequence is. We will not get into the feministic angle of the Lakshman Rekha. That's a different conversation. I'm looking at it purely from the point of view of craft and drama. I think that adds to the Ramayana. So I think that's really what it is about. If it's strong and if readers like it, then it gets absorbed because that's how it becomes popular. And if it's not strong, end of story. I hope I answered your question.
Last question.
Two questions actually. You mentioned that you got the ending of your series in 2019. You waited 6 years. Now for you, you thought that would be the best ending. Now you take that to a publisher. Publisher says it's crap. How do you handle it? I mean, it's easier to say we have to take feedback and all, but there would be a very thin line between, how dare you say that? Ego comes in between, right? So, as they say, J.K. Rowling went to 9 or 10 publishers. So, there is a very thin line to define, okay, this is not that good, or this is good, it's just that this publisher doesn't understand. So, how do you take that call, number one? And it does affect you mentally. So, how do you take that feedback, or how do you cope up? What is your coping mechanism?
We usually take feedback very badly. That's the first reaction. First reaction is this person doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, that's the first reaction. But this actually happens a lot. We are talking about this, in the movie business. It's any industry which is collaborative in that sense, where you have a lot of people who kind of come together and work. This is obviously a problem. I think it all boils down to two things: maturity on the side on the sides of the two people who are involved, and ultimately the question is who's going to take the final call. Somebody has to take the call. Is it the author? Is it the director? Is it the publisher? I think whoever decides that, so it's whoever has more leverage takes the final call. So if I might not agree, if the person sitting across me is Steven Spielberg, I might not agree with the ending, but I know where leverage lies. Leverage is with Steven Spielberg, not with me. But if the person sitting opposite me is a rookie, is a nobody, then leverage is on my side. Then I take the final call. So I think a lot of this is just, who has got more leverage at the the who's sitting at the receiving end. It's just that. Some days I win, some days the other person wins. It depends on who it is. But yes, it is collaborative. We have to take constructive criticisms. That's the nature of the business. That's the nature of all creative business, I guess. Otherwise, you can just paint art and put it out there, and I guess I don't know what else to do, because we could be stuck on a logjam. You and your publisher could be fighting forever. Somebody has to finally agree that find some middle ground somewhere, whatever it is, and that's usually what we do. Even in the movie business, for example, the director doesn't agree, the writer doesn't agree. Then you finally say, okay, what is it you want? What is it I want? Then we agree and we sit. So that's really what we do. We pretend to be mature and move on.
But does it affect you mentally?
Oh yes, it does. It does. Till we have found the solution, we both think the other person is an idiot, and then once we have found the solution, we shake hands and we are very thrilled about it. So that's how it works.
And then they celebrate their successes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we're running out of time.
That's
so
right.
we'll meet you downstairs. Yeah. Thanks.